how is it, and this is self-reflective, how
But
is,
by the way,
yeah,
I do want to correct something that you said.
please.
Like
I'm often wrong. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
I'm good. I had a laugh with you before we got going. And whenever I watch an interview with you, and I'm sure you get this a lot, I am always amazed that someone who can terrify me the way that you have, or like not even terrify me, unsettle me the way that you have, can be such a like a jovial, lovely fella. The question I have, do you have to go to like a dark place to do these films?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel comfortable going to darker places because I kind of excise those demons when I'm writing or making a movie, and then I'm really kind of a silly kind of fun-loving guy, like just someone to hang out and have a drink with, and
Hold
I
on.
would like to believe. But
Yeah.
I do have a streak that's like, like if you're playing sports with me and you elbow me or something, that side of me comes out, and I'm gonna, that other side comes out, and so I do have that color.
But you're saying that like you're like you said, you're a jocular, lovely, nice guy you can have a pint with, everything's going to be all right. But you said there's like a darker side of you that you get to excise through making films. What do you mean by that?
I guess I'm, what, I think the two things are probably linked by their being mischievous. That I'll laugh with you if we were having a drink, but I get a little kick out of scaring people or making them uncomfortable. Playing with them, and so playing games with them, and being making them feel not okay for a second makes me giggle, or inappropriate humor or darkness. So maybe that's kind of a nice bridge to that other side of me that does that for a living, that provokes, I guess is the better word.
Sure, but it's mischievous. It's not sadistic. Like when
No.
like there are filmmakers and there are films, especially in this genre, that it's like you feel like the filmmaker is saying, "What can I put you through?" I always feel like I'm going to be terrified and I'm going to be unsettled, but I'm not going to get that
no,
feeling.
I'm very sensitive to what I call torture porn. So we don't want any of that feeling of I'm using the fact that you're a human being against you by saying, here's a horrific event and I'm going to make you slowly watch it like that. That's not storytelling. That's kind of just manipulation in the worst sense. And when some people come up to me, like, couples will come up or a group of people will come up and go, "Oh, I'm your biggest fan. I've seen all your movies." And there'll be another person there and I'll go, "How about you?" And they'll go, they'll go, "Oh, I don't like those type of movies." And I'm like, girl, that's just one type of movie. I don't know what you're thinking of, like torture or something like that, but that's not what this is. And I go, I said, watch one movie and that you think of mine, that you think it's that, and please then come back and talk to your friend, because that's not why she's coming up to me right now, or your husband or whatever. They're not coming out to me because, wow, you're so good at scaring me. That's part of the ride, of course, but it is this thing you're talking about, that there's a human being that genuinely believes in the good of people, telling you a dark story, but you're going to punch through that with the characters to a kind of a different worldview. That's why they're coming up, your friends coming up.
Let's talk a little bit about that worldview that we get to through this film. So the film Knock at the Cabin is based on a book called The Cabin at the End of the World, which was sort of this like massive horror book that came out a few years ago. It's about a couple, I should say like a gay couple and their daughter, who are at I don't think this has stopped me, but I don't think I'm going to spoil anything, who are in a cabin on vacation. Four strangers come, and this is in the synopsis, so I think I can get away with it. Say you have to sacrifice one of the family members to prevent the apocalypse. When you read this book, what was it about? Because I'm sure you read a lot. What was it about it that made you go like, "Oh, this is a story I actually have to tell"?
That what you just said, I felt was one of those once in 5-year ideas, that it was super provocative. It was full of the thrilling qualities of the genre, but it was very emotional and very powerful. And there's so many ways to take that premise that you just said. Are they crazy? What's the home invasion of it all? then you start to question whether it's real or not, and then I can ping pong you back and forth through that, and just in terms of our conversation that we're having between nihilism and a sense of optimism about things as a worldview, it's a fascinating line of conversation that you and I are having, given that we just went to talk about the book versus the movie. Because I could make a pretty cogent case that that's the difference between the two. I'm trying to talk lightly about it because I'm not trying to lead you guys to one thing or the other, but the author chose to go one direction, and I chose to go another direction.
Yeah, the author chose to go one direction, which would speak to, oh my God, this is so fun, to speak to one of the paths that you were on in terms of nihilism versus idealism, and you chose to go to another path versus nihilism versus
but yeah, and again, I would say, but this isn't about dark versus light. This is it is about nihilism, that ultimately, when you're telling a story from and you go too far, right? The things we're talking about it's what you and I are referencing about this kind of torture porn or something where you go too far. That is because the author or the storyteller genuinely feels in a dark place, that they are there's a little bit of there's hopelessness, that there's some of their self-analysis and reflections on the world have left them bereft of hope. And so there they are. That's where truth lies for them, that I don't know how to take the next step. And so they convey that to the viewer or the reader. That is not the case with me. And so I actually feel that I can do darker things even. And because I don't have that sum to the equation of my analysis of myself and the world around me. And so I feel free to go to really challenge you guys in really, really, sincere ways that are unexpected, but you can sense that it isn't about me trying to bring you to a dark place and hold you where I am in this kind of hopelessness, if that makes sense.
It does. No, it's good. But let me just ground it in the plot or the reality of the film. So when the characters are making the decision about whether they are going to be willing to sacrifice one another to save the world, whether or not that is actually what they're being asked for, one of the questions I felt like you were asking in this film is the world actually worth saving?
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things they're considering. But before they even consider that, or alongside that, there is questions of the veracity of what these individuals are saying.
Sure, but is the world saving on your mind yourself?
Definitely. That's where we're all at. So I can honestly tell you, sometimes I think we're cockroaches, right? That's bad. That's saying bad things about cockroaches. They've never really done anything. So we're really much worse. Worse impact on the world. But we could flip that if we wanted to, and that's the question: is it possible to flip it? Our track record's pretty bad, but we could flip it. But the thing I was talking about was referencing something in the book that was there something I couldn't get past.
The film is also centered around sort of the Christian idea of the apocalypse, the idea, and it actually has a couple of biblical sort of overtones. One is the idea of the apocalypse. Another is one I won't mention because it'll spoil it. And the other is the idea, I guess, of Abraham and Isaac, like sacrificing the thing that means the most to you so that you will be able to, prove your loyalty to God or prove your love to God. It's not the first time that your films have come up in sort of a religious path. The Sixth Sense that came up as well. Like, does that predicate the idea of life after death? How's your spiritual life? Is that a part of your life?
I would. It was interesting how you did that. You talking about organized religion, and then you asked me about my spiritual life.
Yeah, I was intentional.
Yeah. So it's very fascinating because it was. Those are two different answers, I guess. With regard to, I'm so not religious.
Yeah.
That's just not my thing at all. But I guess I would consider myself pretty spiritual. breathing in the things that the world offers and really believing in its benevolence as an entity. And what does that mean? Kind of like, I don't know if it's physics or whatever, but the universe wants you to grow. It doesn't, necessarily, it's not there for destruction, although destruction is a kind of a resetting and a starting over, which is a beautiful part of a cycle of growth. So you have to be careful how you're interpreting the things that are happening to you when something bad happens to us or stumbling us or something like that, that it's actually an accelerant for growth. And ultimately that's where I believe everything is meant for us. So, so as you can see, I do have a lot of thoughts about things in that realm of that are beyond what we can touch and feel, but not a huge fan of organized religion, although I'm very fascinated by it.
Yeah, I can tell.
And so it comes into my movies a lot. Like when you think, like I have a poster on the wall of The Exorcist. And I grew up Hindu. It's not like as a child or a teenager, I watched The Exorcist and I went, wow, this really does reinforce my religious beliefs. I'm like, this is amazing, that the idea of good and evil, battling over a child's soul feels profound, the perversity of that, and some, and so I was thinking of it more now, retrospectively as an adult, thinking of it more as mythology, much like a fictional mythology, so, or mythology that, that human beings wish it were true, like aliens or ghosts or what, and so I have fun with mythologies that I can ground. And I guess I've just been so inculcated or indoctrinated by Catholicism. I went to Catholic school for 10 years. And my family is pretty active Hindus. And so, seeing religion as ways to find meaning and feel like you're a part of something bigger, which I think is a necessity as a human being. And so I think if, all these years, this is 30 years of making movies and I was in, all these countries in the world and all these fans are there. And I was, and I have to believe that the thing that they're connecting to generation after generation is this wish fulfillment, that my stories say, hey, you're a part of something larger, you know?
In those 30 years, speaking of faith, you've obviously had tremendous faith in your own self, in that you've stuck to your creative vision, sort of against all odds throughout your career. Where does that come from?
It's a great question. Whenever I come across something that would jeopardize that, a person, a decision, money, the wrong kind of money, the wrong kind of opportunity, I feel that thing that is sacred at risk, and I don't do it. And so, and when I have tricked myself into doing one of those things for what I think is benevolent reasons, and it starts to corrupt the thing that's sacred to me, which is the thing that's sacred is my relationship to the story.
Can you give me an example of the thing that would corrupt it?
Putting myself in a circumstance where I do not have the ultimate say about my relationship between me and the storytelling and the art of cinema. So, for example, would be, if they asked me, there was a big, I'm trying to think without saying specific things. There's a giant franchises that wanted me to be do one of them. And they called me and said, we really want you to do one. This is like the 5th time they called me for this. And I'm like, hey, you don't want me to do this. And they go, we're calling you. We want you to do this. And I'm like, okay, let's do a little thought exercise. And so this is what I said to them. Let's do a little thought exercise. I see a $1 million Swiss movie that I think is brilliant. And I'm going to I see the way the women are dressed in that little movie. And I say, whoever did this, I find out this woman costume. I said, I'm now going to make her the costumer of this gigantic movie. How do you feel about that? And they said, well, we'll definitely, we'll all watch that and we'll all talk about it. And then we will bring you some other ideas too no, that's not what we're going to do. what's happening in that moment is I saw something numinous in this fictional woman that we're talking about, and the way she costumed. I saw her relations to shape and movement and form that is preternatural and beyond what she should be able to do. And it's inspiring me. I just need to be around this person so I can learn from her and be inspired by her. I'm not going to get you to talk me out of it. And I said, so they were silent, and I go, that's why I can't do your franchise.
Wow.
Because it's too, I don't want to take that kind of money to make that large a movie and put all of these instincts at risk. I would rather make a small movie with that individual and dazzle you. So that's how, like, that's a literal conversation that we had. And to be frank, it was, you know, you're constantly as a human being trying to be, it's this pull between finding out who you are and trying to be accepted by everyone.
Yeah.
At the highest level. You know, we're kind of, you know, beat into us that we need to succeed and be accepted by everybody, you know, and we call it fame or success or being rich, whatever you want to call it. But really, at the end of the day, it's being accepted, right? And yet that doesn't ultimately make you happy. It's a false goal. But when I think, started to feel like, God, this is so hard. Everyone's always fighting me. They're fighting me. I don't, you know, I hear things and they seem so true and they make me so happy. And then they face resistance coming into the world. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe there's an easier way. And everyone's saying you should be this way. You should do it this way. You should. And everyone has advice, even the people on your side. It's easier to do it this way. So you know, after like decades, you try it and you go, okay, let me join the system. You know, everybody else seems to be getting, you know, on this parade. It's fantastic. So I join it, and not only am I not good at it, I'm so unhappy. And I can see that I've now corrupted the thing that I've had the thing that everyone always wants, which I've found the thing that makes me so happy, and I'm really good at it. And it doesn't matter if you see it on the day, you will one day, because the relationship between me and the story is, I love that. I love it, you know, and that was such a joyous moment. And most people would have seen it as the nadir moment in the career. But obviously, that's the time when you shed your ego so much that you're just standing there with the things that are most important to you. And I went, let's mortgage the house. I'm going to tell a story, and it's going to be funny and scary. And I don't care that nobody has done it before. I don't care that it's never succeeded before. We're going to change the genre, and that's what's going to happen. So I made the movie The Visit, and we got here. And it was, you know, it was like razor sharp between succeeding and not succeeding and bankruptcy and all of those things. But the joy of the sacredness of the thing that was really important to me kept me making the right micro decisions and macro decisions during that time.
But let's stay on that for a second. So let's what we're really referring to here, or at least what I'm referring to here, because I'm not going to put words in your mouth, is that one of the very first things you ever do, The Sixth Sense, becomes this like generational film. I want to go back to something you said about and I'll continue to make it a nameless, faceless, gigantic film production company that I'm not going to name. I'll continue to do that. When you made The Sixth Sense, was there more room for stories like it than there is now in theaters? Was there more? Because I've heard you talk about this before, that back then, like, what did Hollywood look back then for stories like yours?
I mean, it was geared towards original auteur filmmakers. That's what they were searching for. That's what they were nurturing. They believed in it, inspired by it. It wasn't corporations owning the studios at that time. They were aspirational filmmakers, and it was meant to support the best storytellers in the world to tell unique stories to the mass audience. That's what it was geared at. So there was, you know, it was a different profile of what they were buying and supporting and all that stuff. And that has changed, but it definitely hasn't gone away. And those of us that are lucky enough to still tell those kind of stories, see their audiences are still there. And then all these wonderful new voices that are coming up that keep proving everyone wrong again and again and again is amazing. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And, you know, all of that, they will always be the Get Outs. All of those kind of moments are going to keep happening. You can't stop original voices from reaching the people.
How is it, and this is self-reflective,
by the way, I do want to correct something that you said.
Please.
Like
I'm often wrong.
Well, no, it's not that you're wrong. You're propagating a narrative that you heard,
Okay.
which was you came out of the gates and you made a first film that was a generational film in Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
And then you went on. Already you told a narrative that is incorrect. So that was my third movie.
And now to be fair to me, I said early. To be fair to me, I said early in your career. Early in your career.
What the narrative wants to be is you got lucky. That's what the narrative wants to be, which is incorrect narrative. The narrative is you made a feature at 21. It was too sentimental and it never really found its audience. You got devastated.
Yeah.
You can't find another way. It's like you don't believe in yourself. You write another movie. It gets bought in a bidding war by a man named Harvey Weinstein, who turns out to be one of the historical monsters of all time. And I go through the fire with that guy and the years of working with that guy. And again, too sentimental, too emotional, too overly spiritual, all that stuff. Through these experiences, you're building these muscles up. Now I'm only 24, 25, and suddenly it hits me how to tell stories in a way to different people in different ways, in comedy and this and scares. And I write Stuart Little and Sixth Sense and do another movie for another studio that was their biggest movie of that year. And I just started to feel my own agency in a way that I wish everyone could, because essentially Harvey represented your demon, right? And as a child to be not a child, a young man, to face the demon, like that, and come out standing. And then I make this thing, we put it, they hate the movie, they dump it in the worst part of the year, the movie succeeds, and by itself, I start writing Unbreakable the same year. I believe I make a better movie that same year. That's a more nuanced conversation than you made a movie and you got lucky. Yeah. That's not what happened. It was.
I think that drives you crazy.
By fire, yeah.
I think that drives you crazy, not just because it's inaccurate.
Yes.
I think it's not just that it's inaccurate that it drives you crazy. I think it drives you crazy for another reason.
What's that?
I don't know. But not only is it inaccurate, but I think it tells a story that is not comfortable. It's symbolic in a way that's not good.
Yeah, it tells a false narrative that it takes the agency away from my story, and thus takes the agency away from all the listeners. You know how much pain that you had to go through to get to that moment where you broke through? Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot of failure and a lot of fear you have to face. And then the narrative keeps on trying to hold you back. It's like, in my opinion, 11 months later, I made a better movie in Unbreakable. The world didn't receive it that way because no one had made a comic book movie, nor a grounded, somber comic book movie, so it's a fascinating relationship between media. I've always had this really complicated relationship. Now it's kind of become easier to some extent because I've been around so long that it can't help but have a little bit of information behind it. Sorry, I keep getting you off your topic.
You're not getting me off my topic.
I have such a good time talking to you. This has been good.
Oh, I'm having a good time talking to you too. But they're going to kill me if they're going to break into this thing if I keep talking any longer. You know what I mean? They're going to murder me.
But you just have a great way. It's like I feel like we could just talk about anything.
I'm just going to here to tell you I'm looking forward to your buddy cop movie whenever you decide to make that one.
That's right. I can't wait.
I think do you ever think about that? Do you ever think about going full other genre at this stage? I know you did.
Well, I feel like other than family movies, which is a separate thing, like the Stuart Littles and all those family movies that I've really been interested in, I do feel a lot of pliability in the way I make movies. That like Knock at the Cabin has a pretty serious romantic line in it. It's a romance, and I feel the love story is critical and really important to me about why I wanted to tell the story. I've been telling love stories, in there, and I kind of, really enjoy the humor as we talked about. So I feel able to flex muscles in those areas, but I don't get tired of being a mystery writer. So if that's the kind of the overall question, and really mystery is the genre underneath thriller and all of that's the base genre, right?
Yeah,
the mystery
it is. You're right. What a joy to talk to you, man. Thanks so much.
And I feel bad. I wish we could talk some more, but you're so amazing. Thank you for having me on.
You should come to Toronto and we can talk here next time. Next time you're in Toronto,
I would
come into
love
the
that.
studio and we'll have a chat.
That would be amazing.
Congrats on the film, man. Nice to meet you.
Take care, buddy.